Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. I've got winners and losers from day one of the 2025 NBA draft. It was a whirlwind, one of the craziest NBA drafts I can remember, and we're only halfway through. We've got day two ahead of us tomorrow. Day one was a doozy. I hope you guys did enjoy the draft, and I hope you enjoy the content here. If you do, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content. And let's jump into that video preview. Just to give a little bit of explanation behind winners and losers, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings here. So proceed with caution, okay? If you're going to get all upset at me, please don't. There's no reason to. This is just my subjective opinion and my analysis based on my big board, based on my evaluation of these prospects. And I really want you to listen carefully. There are a few times in this video where I'm going to have graphics that showcase someone being quote unquote a loser. It doesn't mean that I think that player's a loser. It doesn't even mean that I think that team's a loser. There are different ways to be winners and losers in this year's draft. For example, winners could be someone who I think their archetype thrived this year. Someone like a Collin Murray-Boyles, for example, who we'll talk about for Toronto later in this video. Otherwise, it could be a team who I thought did very well tonight or this week in general when it comes to the draft. Mostly we will be focused on just tonight, but I do think the overall context of a team does matter when we give our analysis. And then for losers, again, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings here, but this is my subjective analysis and my opinion. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But losers in this video will be teams who did poorly, players who fell a bit, or positional archetypes that are undervalued. Now, I do have an honorable mention here. Jace Richardson ultimately went 25th overall to the Orlando Magic. I think the Magic did very, very well with that selection. I absolutely love that pick for them. The reality, though, Jace Richardson's a little bit of a loser. He went way lower in the draft than he should have because of his measurements. Again, the NBA Combine continues to strike down good players because of physical tools. And listen, if I don't mention your favorite team, if you don't hear anything about them in this video, comment your questions at me down below. I will respond to all of the comments asking my thoughts on specific players. So comment down below if you want to hear my thoughts, my opinion, my analysis on a guy that your team drafted or how your team drafted as a whole. Just comment down below and I will be responding to all of those comments tonight. Winner number one here, very clearly for me, is the San Antonio Spurs. I thought the Spurs did tremendously well. Of course, they were in a great position with two lottery picks here in the 2025 NBA draft. And the first one, I thought they struck gold with Dylan Harper. I had him ranked as the number 2 player in my draft board this year. And I thought the Spurs just trusting that process, going throughout the process and ultimately landing on the guy that they thought not only was the best talent available to them at that pick, but not overthinking it, not passing on him because he's a guard with other guards. The way that I look at it, San Antonio should be able to offer him a ton of on-ball opportunity. And I do think with his positional size and his skill set and his willingness to play off of other players as well, where he actually succeeded quite well at Rutgers in that kind of style when he was afforded those opportunities, I think the Spurs here are in a great spot where they can accompany him into their roster, make him as a long-term fit as he learns and grows and develops into an NBA player. He comes from great pedigree with his father being Ron Harper, who had a very successful NBA career. And then not only did the Spurs get Dylan Harper, but at 14, Carter Bryant slid just a little bit down the board from where I was projecting him to go, and they land him ultimately at 14. Carter Bryant was also ranked number 14 on my big board himself. So not only is it a positional value at that draft slot at number 14, but I think this is a really great fit for the Spurs. You know, there were questions about Harper and is there enough basketball to go around for this team with Castle and Harper and Fox and Wemby. I think the answer is now resoundingly yes. I still think everything will work out just fine there for the Spurs because they have a lot of talent and that usually leads to winning. But then secondly here, for specifically Carter Bryant, I think he's a great fit into this because he's a low usage player, just a 16% usage rate at Arizona, but extremely functional off the basketball and can get after it defensively as a helper at the rim, super active, super athletic. That shows up on his offensive film as well. I thought the Spurs killed it on the first night of the draft. They also traded away pick number 38 for future draft pick control, which I thought made some sense given how San Antonio has been looking to operate with flexibility. So the Spurs here get Dylan Harper, get Carter Bryant. I absolutely love this for them on draft night this year. Winner number two for me is very evidently the Phoenix Suns, a team that was oh so small, had no good centers on the roster, and yes, that includes Nick Richards, someone who I have at length said is not a good center. They get not one, but two awesome centers in this year's draft. They're able to get Khaman Maluach at number 10, who fell to them inexplicably. I thought he was going to go at number 7 to New Orleans. Ultimately falls down the board just a little bit, lands to Phoenix at that spot, and they're able to trade pick number 29 in this draft and a future 2029 first-round pick that is the swap worst among 3 different teams for Mark Williams. And while, yes, Mark Williams comes with his own host of injury issues and concerns long-term, this is a young center, a moldable big who has some elite rim gravity and some significant size. He's been a double-double machine for Charlotte when he's actually been on the court. And for Phoenix specifically, with a team that had so many glaring issues in their front court, to walk away with not 1 but 2 starting caliber centers in the league. Mark Williams probably on the lower end of that threshold, but Khaman Maluach, who I think long-term can be an awesome big man for them. I think about Jalen Green there. I think about Devin Booker and the value of having not 1 but 2 very good screen setters now, and I think Maluach specifically, the best screen setter in the 2025 NBA draft, stands out in such a big way as an awesome home run pick for Phoenix. Suns fans, if you're watching right now, you might have a little bit of hatred built up toward me. I have been very harsh on this team, very harsh on this organization. If you were watching when the Bradley Beal trade happened, I laid into this Suns team. Everything that Phoenix has done in the last 2 years has been, for the most part, terrible. I did not love the Kevin Durant trade for them when they acquired him. I did not love the acquisition of Bradley Beal. In fact, I completely hated it. I have not liked many of their depth additions. Last year, I thought they did okay with Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro. I did like those selections for them. This was a home run draft for the Phoenix Suns. The assets that they gave up for Mark Williams, using pick number 10 to ultimately walk away with Khaman Maluach, getting 3 rotation players for Kevin Durant at his age, I think is a huge home run swing for the Suns, getting Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and Khaman Maluach. Now, don't get me wrong here. It's not like Jalen Green's a great elite player. It's not like Dylan Brooks is an elite player. Khaman Maluach has the potential to provide elite impact over time. I'm very excited about this, especially for Devin Booker, who gets 2 awesome screen setters. I think this is going to make his mid-range game come back to life in a big way. I think his efficiency is going to skyrocket because he has 2 awesome rim gravity big men who are young, mobile, and athletic on the floor with him now moving forward. Loser number 1, and this is where you have to listen really carefully to me. Clearly, I don't have the Suns and Pelicans as losers. The big man spot is the continued loser in this draft class once again. If you've been watching the channel, if you've been watching mock drafts, if you've been watching my breakdowns, big men are continuously overlooked. I referenced it with regard to Alperen Sengun, who fell all the way down to 16 in 2021. I referenced it with Derik Lively, who fell down to 12 in his draft class in 2023. This continues to be a problem in the NBA draft. Big men are not valued to the extent that their winning impact plays on good teams. Look across the NBA, a lot of the best teams, what do they have? Good center play. Teams continue to overlook and look past the centers, and they fall on draft night. It happened with Khaman Maluach here, falling all the way down to pick number 10. It happened with Danny Wolf falling down to pick number 27. It happened with Derek Queen falling down to pick number 13. Now, you can definitely have your opinion on the fact that New Orleans probably gave too much up to move up to 13 from 23. That was a very aggressive trade for New Orleans, one that I'm not sure I'm in love with, even though I really like Derek Queen as a player and a prospect. Queen was number 3 on my big board. Khaman Maluach was number 4 on my big board. Of course, Mark Williams was acquired for a very reasonable asking price as well from Charlotte. Part of that has to do with his injury history, of course, but I thought big men were extremely undervalued in tonight's draft. I think, a big like Derek Queen, a big like Khaman Maluach, both should have gone significantly earlier in this draft. There were a lot of players who were drafted after them that are not nearly as talented as them. And I think all things considered, have kind of a disdain toward how NBA teams are operating with big men saying, oh, well, we can find cheap ones later. We can, find other ways to address it without drafting a good one. And then over time, the teams that draft good ones end up standing out in a big way. Then we move on to winners number 3. And I've got 4 teams I want to talk about in here now. The Dallas Mavericks, Atlanta Hawks, Miami Heat, and Toronto Raptors. And this is kind of the hodgepodge of teams that I wanted to mention and wanted to make sure I showed some love to in this video. The Miami Heat, we'll start with them. Kasparas Jakuponis at number 20, I think, is an A+ level steal. I had him number 10 on my big board this year. While I do think there are some concerns with the turnovers, I don't think he has a super juiced up handle, the ability to win consistently in isolation. I think the fit in Miami around Tyler Hero and around Bam Adebayo is tremendous because they're going to be able to flow into dribble handoffs, put Jokic into advantage a little bit more consistently than other franchises would be able to. Eric Spoelstra is a super creative coach. He finds good ways to use smalls, whether it's as screeners or in off-ball action. I think Jokic landing in Miami is a dream fit not only for him, but for a guy like Bam Adebayo and Khalil Ware, who just now got a guard who can process the floor at a high level with some real shot-making talent too. And I think as his shot continues to develop, the high three-point attempt rate leads me to believe that he's going to become a good three-point shooter over time. Then you look at Toronto. I thought they did tremendously well for themselves. Drafted the guy I had 7th on my big board this year in Collin Murray-Boyles. Now, it doesn't address the spacing concerns that Toronto might have offensively. Collin Murray-Boyles, of course, his biggest pet peeve right now coming into this draft is his outside jump shooting. But they get a very good, rangy, multi-effort, high-intensity defender with intelligence, IQ, and the ability to put it all together as a connective piece offensively as well. I think this is a great fit into Darko's system there in Toronto. This is a guy who's going to be another linchpin piece in their defense. They're building one of the better defensive units in the entire NBA. I love the way that young teams are going about putting together their rosters with a defensive emphasis, and as they find offensive talent along the way, they're going to be able to piece together a very good roster. I think Toronto's doing a tremendous job with this pick. Of course, Brandon Ingram's going to help elevate that offense a bit next year as well. I really like this CMB selection for Toronto at number 7. Atlanta, I thought absolutely killed it. I talked about that Derek Queen trade, not only getting Porzingis earlier this week with pick number 22. I thought that was a great value trade for the Hawks. They still have their trade exception at number 25 at $25+ million to work with too. Nickeil Alexander-Walker continues to be a name linked to Atlanta, but then also trading down from 13, getting pick 23 in return, walking away with Asa Newell, I thought was very good for Atlanta. And then you're also looking at the fact that the Hawks got a future first-round pick in 2026, the most favorable of either Bucks or Pelicans. That's a super attractive asset for the Hawks to have gotten. Joe Dumars has been, I think, stupidly aggressive this offseason in his first season running the Pelicans, and I think the Hawks were sitting there licking their chops trying to take advantage of him. Now, I'm higher on Derek Queen than almost anybody. I'm a huge believer in his talent and skill. I think New Orleans got a tremendous player at number 13, but the Hawks gained a lot of flexibility for a team that already owes some of their own picks out the door, looking for ways to find creativity. Not only did they get Porzingis for relatively cheap this week, but then they moved down from 13, still got a good player at 23, and picked up meaningful draft capital for next year. I thought A-plus effort here from Atlanta. They did a great job in this draft. And then, of course, such an easy team to talk about as a winner here, Dallas. First overall pick. It's no surprise. I don't have to spend a whole bunch of time on it, but getting Cooper Flagg, this is a transformational player for this organization. The Mavericks needed a build-around guy post Luka Doncic. They lucked into that selection with the first overall pick, and ultimately they do finally call Cooper Flagg's name first overall in this year's draft. I love it for Dallas. Loser number 2 for me, Brooklyn. While, listen, they had a bunch of first-round picks this year. I like the Drake Powell selection. I like the Danny Wolf selection. I just don't love what they did with their first 2 picks, though. At number 8 and number 19, I think drafting Egor Demin, this was one of the worst picks in the entire draft, in my opinion. Now, Nets fans, let me know in the comment section if you disagree with me, but I just am not a believer in Egor Demin's overall game. I totally get, like, he's a big, long passer with great playmaking feel. I love that. There's a lot to enjoy about that as a prospect. Is he a point guard? I think the answer to that is definitively no. Now, in Jordi Fernandez's offense, there is going to be ability for the bigs, especially with dribble handoffs and playing out a delay action, to generate advantage for Egor Demin, and that's exactly what he needs because he can't really dribble the ball at the level a point guard needs to be able to in the NBA. And I think for Traore, another skilled playmaker. I do like the idea that the Nets are trying to go with when it comes to a bunch of playmaking, a bunch of connective pieces. They're going to get out and run in transition, play off of each other at a very quick pace. I think all of that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Does it translate to winning, though? And did the players that they get actually lead to wins? Because Demin, not a great three-point shooter right now, not a great rim presence, even despite his elite positional size. And then Traore, if you watch how teams were guarding him over in the LNB Pro A, they're going under screens, they're gapping him. This is not a guy who's going to be respected as a shooter in the NBA level. My fear here is the Nets drafted 2 point guards who teams don't have to defend out on the perimeter with the ball in their hands. I think they're going to get gapped on, sagged. They're going to go under on ball screens, and I think it's going to cause Brooklyn to significantly struggle next year. The Nets will probably be in the running for an AJ DeBonsa, Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson. And that's not a great night for them, in my opinion. I thought they did much better in the second half of the first round than they did with their first 2 picks. Just not a fan of Egor Demin and Nolan Traore with those first 2 selections. Winner number 4 is us. I just felt like the draft was so crazy this year, so much fun. I had such a great time watching it, and I'm sure you all did as well. I had a lot of fun live streaming today for my birthday. It's just been a tremendous year in general. This draft cycle was so much fun, and we're only halfway done with it now. Day 2 tomorrow. Stay tuned for more uploads. Let me know your winners and losers down in the comments section below. And thank you all again so much for watching. Really do appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.